The morning sun cast long shadows through the dense forest as Maria walked her usual path with her German shepherd, Luna. The dog had been restless all week, pulling toward the abandoned industrial area on the outskirts of town. Maria thought it was just curiosity, but Luna's behavior seemed different this time, more urgent. Luna suddenly broke free from her leash and sprinted toward a crumbling concrete building that had been empty for years. Maria called after her, but the dog disappeared around the corner of the structure. When she finally caught up, she found Luna scratching frantically at a heavy metal door, whining in a way she had never heard before. The building had once been a small manufacturing plant, but it had been closed for over a decade. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete and rust stained the metal walls. Most people avoided this place, considering it dangerous and unstable, but Luna seemed determined to get inside. Maria tried to pull her dog away, but Luna refused to budge. The German shepherd kept pawing at the door and looking back at her owner with desperate eyes. Something was clearly wrong. Maria had raised Luna from a puppy, and she knew when her dog was trying to tell her something important. As she examined the door more closely, Maria noticed it wasn't completely sealed. There was a small gap at the bottom, just wide enough for air to pass through. Luna kept sniffing at this gap, her tail wagging but her body tense with concern. The dog's instincts were telling her something that Maria couldn't yet understand. Maria decided to investigate further. She walked around the building looking for another way in. Most of the windows were boarded up or too high to reach, but she found a side entrance where the door hung slightly open. The hinges creaked as she pushed it wider, and a musty smell escaped from the darkness inside. Luna immediately rushed through the opening, and Maria reluctantly followed. The interior was dim, with only scattered beams of sunlight filtering through broken sections of the roof. Old machinery sat covered in dust and rust, and debris littered the floor. It looked like the kind of place where homeless people might seek shelter, but Maria saw no signs of recent human activity. Then she heard it. A faint tapping sound coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Luna was already moving toward the noise, her ears perked up and her body alert. The tapping seemed rhythmic, almost like Morse code. Someone was definitely in there, and they seemed to be trying to communicate. Maria followed Luna through a maze of old equipment and fallen ceiling tiles. The tapping grew louder as they moved toward the back of the building. Luna stopped in front of what appeared to be a storage room with a reinforced door. The tapping was coming from inside. "Hello?" Maria called out hesitantly. "Is someone in there?" The tapping stopped immediately, replaced by a muffled voice. "Help me," the voice said, weak but clearly human. "Please, I've been trapped in here for days." Maria's heart raced. She examined the door and found it was locked from the outside with a heavy padlock. Someone had deliberately imprisoned whoever was inside. The voice belonged to a man, and he sounded exhausted and desperate. "I'm going to get help," Maria told him. "What's your name?" "David," the voice replied. "David Chen, please hurry. I don't have much water left." Maria looked at Luna, who had positioned herself right next to the door and showed no intention of leaving. The dog seemed to understand that someone needed their help. Her protective instincts had kicked in, and she was already standing guard. "I'll be back as soon as I can," Maria promised. She tried to coax Luna to come with her, but the German shepherd refused to move. The dog had found someone who needed protection, and nothing was going to make her abandon her post. Maria ran back through the building and out into the sunlight. She fumbled for her phone and dialed emergency services, her hands shaking as she explained the situation. The dispatcher asked for her location and assured her that police and paramedics were on their way. While waiting for help to arrive, Maria returned to the building. She could hear Luna inside, occasionally whimpering or making soft sounds as if she was trying to comfort whoever was trapped behind the door. The dog had already formed a bond with this stranger, driven by an instinct to help that was stronger than her loyalty to her owner. When the police arrived, they had to use bolt cutters to remove the padlock. The door swung open to reveal a small storage room with no windows and barely enough space for a person to lie down. Inside, they found David Chen, a 34-year-old engineer who had been missing for 6 days. David was dehydrated and weak, but conscious and able to speak. He told the officers that he had been kidnapped by 2 men who had been demanding money from his family. They had left him in this room while they negotiated, but something had gone wrong and they hadn't returned. He had been surviving on a small bottle of water and had been tapping on the door whenever he heard any sounds outside. hoping someone would find him. Luna immediately approached David as the paramedics checked his condition. Despite never having met him before, the dog seemed to recognize that he had been through trauma. She sat quietly beside him as the medical team worked, offering the kind of calm presence that only animals can provide. David reached out with a shaky hand to pet Luna's head. "Thank you, girl," he whispered. "You saved my life." As the paramedics prepared to transport David to the hospital, Luna showed no signs of wanting to leave his side. Maria had to gently pull her away, promising the dog that they would visit David once he was better. Luna looked back at David as they loaded him into the ambulance, her tail wagging slowly as if she was saying goodbye to a friend. The police immediately began investigating David's kidnapping, using the information he provided to track down his captors. But for Maria and Luna, this was just the beginning of an extraordinary friendship. The German Shepherd had used her remarkable instincts to save a human life, and neither she nor her owner would ever forget the importance of trusting those instincts when someone needed help. 3 days after David's rescue, Maria received a phone call that surprised her. It was David himself calling from his hospital bed. His voice was stronger now, though still tired from his ordeal. He wanted to thank Luna personally and asked if he could see her again. Maria visited the hospital that afternoon with Luna by her side. The nursing staff was initially hesitant about allowing a dog in the building, but when they heard Luna's story, they made an exception. David was in a private room on the 3rd floor, recovering from dehydration and the psychological trauma of his imprisonment. When Luna entered the room, her reaction was immediate and touching. She walked directly to David's bedside and sat down, placing her head gently on the edge of his bed. David's eyes filled with tears as he stroked her fur. For both of them, it was like reuniting with an old friend, even though they had only met briefly during his rescue. "She stayed with me the whole time you were gone," David told Maria. "I could hear her through the door, making these soft sounds like she was trying to tell me everything would be okay. I honestly don't think I would have made it without knowing she was there." The hospital staff was amazed by Luna's behavior. She seemed to understand that David was still healing and remained calm and gentle throughout the visit. When other patients heard about the rescue dog, several asked if they could meet her. Luna graciously accepted attention from everyone, but her focus always returned to David. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, David's attending physician, was particularly interested in Luna's effect on her patient. "I've seen therapy dogs before," she told Maria, "but this is different. Luna seems to have a genuine emotional connection with David. His stress levels drop significantly when she's here." David's family had flown in from across the country after learning about his kidnapping. His parents, Robert and Linda Chen, were initially skeptical about the dog visits. They worried that too much excitement might interfere with their son's recovery. But when they saw how calm and happy David became around Luna, their concerns disappeared. "It's like she understands exactly what he's been through," Linda observed. "She doesn't try to play or get excited like most dogs would. She just provides this peaceful presence that helps him feel safe." The police investigation into David's kidnapping was progressing slowly. The 2 men who had taken him were still at large, and David struggled with anxiety about their potential return. He had trouble sleeping and was constantly worried that they might try to hurt him or his family again. The doctors were concerned about his mental health and had recommended counseling. During one of Luna's visits, something remarkable happened. David was having a particularly difficult day, feeling anxious and unable to relax. Luna seemed to sense his distress and did something she had never done before. She carefully climbed onto the hospital bed and positioned herself beside David, offering him the comfort of her warm presence. The nursing staff should have objected to a dog on the bed, but they could see how much it helped David. His breathing became deeper and more regular, and for the first time since his rescue, he fell into a peaceful sleep. Luna remained perfectly still for over an hour, only moving when David woke up naturally. Word of Luna's therapeutic abilities spread throughout the hospital. Other patients going through trauma or dealing with anxiety asked if they could spend time with her. Maria was initially hesitant, not wanting to overwhelm her dog, but Luna seemed to thrive on helping people heal. Dr. Mitchell approached Maria with an unusual request. "Would you consider allowing Luna to become a certified therapy dog?" she asked. "She has natural abilities that could help many people, not just David. We could arrange for proper training and certification. Maria was intrigued by the idea but wanted to discuss it with David first. When she mentioned it to him, his response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Luna saved my life," he said. "If she can help other people the way she's helped me, then we have to make it happen." David's recovery was progressing well physically, but the emotional healing was taking longer. He had nightmares about being trapped and struggled with claustrophobia. Simple things like being in elevators or small rooms made him panic. The doctor said this was normal for someone who had experienced what he had, but it was frustrating for David, who had always been independent and confident. Luna seemed to understand his fears instinctively. During one visit, David mentioned that he was dreading going home because his apartment felt too small and confining now. Luna walked over to him and performed a behavior that amazed everyone in the room. She gently took his hand in her mouth and led him to the window, encouraging him to look outside at the open sky. "She's showing him there's a way out," Dr. Mitchell observed. "She's helping him remember that he's not trapped anymore." The bond between David and Luna continued to strengthen with each visit. David began bringing small treats for her, and Luna would perform simple tricks that made him smile. More importantly, she helped him feel secure enough to start talking about his experience with the hospital counselor. David's kidnapping had been a case of mistaken identity. The two men had confused him with someone else who owed them money. When they realized their mistake, they had panicked and abandoned him rather than face the consequences of their actions. David had done nothing wrong, but he still struggled with feelings of helplessness and vulnerability. Luna's presence helped him work through these emotions. When he felt overwhelmed, he would focus on petting her soft fur and listening to her steady breathing. She became his anchor to the present moment, helping him stay calm when memories of his imprisonment threatened to overwhelm him. The hospital staff began documenting Luna's therapeutic techniques, hoping to learn from her natural abilities. They noticed that she had different approaches for different patients. With David, she was calm and protective. With other patients, she might be more playful or energetic depending on what they needed. As David prepared for discharge, both he and Luna seemed reluctant to say goodbye. The doctors had cleared him to go home, but they recommended continued therapy and gradual reintegration into normal activities. David was nervous about leaving the safety of the hospital, but Luna's presence during his final day there gave him the confidence he needed to take the next step in his recovery. Before leaving, David made a promise to Luna and Maria. "I'm going to get better," he said, "and when I do, I want to help you train other therapy dogs." Luna showed me that healing doesn't always come from medicine or therapy. Sometimes it comes from having someone who cares enough to stay by your side when you need them most. David's first week back home was more difficult than anyone had anticipated. His apartment, which had once felt like a comfortable sanctuary, now seemed like a prison. Every closed door reminded him of his captivity, and he found himself checking the locks obsessively throughout the day and night. Maria brought Luna to visit David at his apartment on his third day home. The moment they arrived, Luna sensed David's distress. His hands were shaking as he let them in, and his eyes constantly darted toward the windows and exits. The confident engineer who had once lived here seemed like a different person entirely. Luna immediately went to work doing what she did best. She walked through the apartment methodically, sniffing each room as if conducting a security check. When she was satisfied that everything was safe, she returned to David and sat at his feet, looking up at him with calm, reassuring eyes. "She's telling you it's okay," Maria observed. "She's checked everything out and you're safe here." David knelt down and buried his face in Luna's fur. "I know it's stupid," he said, his voice muffled. "I know those men are probably hundreds of miles away by now, but I can't stop feeling like they're watching me, waiting to grab me again." The police had made some progress in their investigation. They had identified the two kidnappers through security footage from near the abandoned building, but the men had fled the state and were still being pursued. Detective Sarah Williams, who was leading the case, had warned David that it might take months to apprehend them. Dr. Martinez, David's therapist, had explained that his fears were a normal response to trauma. "Your brain is trying to protect you," she had told him. "It's on high alert because it doesn't want you to be caught off guard again. The challenge is learning to turn down that alarm system when you're actually safe." Luna seemed to understand this better than any human could. During her visits, she would position herself between David and the door, as if standing guard. But unlike a human bodyguard, her presence was calming rather than alarming. She helped David feel protected without making him feel more anxious. David's employer, Tech Solutions Inc., had been understanding about his situation. They had given him extended medical leave and assured him that his job would be waiting when he was ready to return. His manager, Jennifer Adams, had even offered to let him work from home initially. But David worried that isolating himself further might make his recovery more difficult. During one of Luna's visits, David shared his concerns with Maria. "I used to love my job," he said. "I was good at solving problems, working with teams, traveling to different project sites. Now I can't even handle being in my own apartment. How am I supposed to go back to work?" Luna seemed to sense the importance of this conversation. She stood up and walked to David's computer, placing her paw on the keyboard. Then she looked back at him expectantly, as if encouraging him to try. "She wants you to start small," Maria interpreted. "Maybe you don't have to jump back into everything at once. What if you tried working from home for just an hour a day?" David was hesitant, but Luna's encouragement gave him courage. He opened his laptop and logged into his work email for the first time since his rescue. There were hundreds of messages, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt a small spark of his old confidence returning. Luna lay down beside his chair as he began reading through the emails. Whenever David seemed to tense up or become anxious, she would gently place her head on his leg, reminding him that he wasn't alone. Her steady presence helped him focus on the familiar world of engineering problems and project updates. After an hour of work, David felt more like himself than he had since his rescue. "I think I can do this," he told Luna, scratching behind her ears. "Maybe not full-time yet, but I can start building back up to it." The next challenge came when David needed to venture outside his apartment for a therapy appointment. He had been avoiding leaving the building, having his groceries delivered and conducting all his business over the phone. But Dr. Martinez insisted that face-to-face sessions were important for his recovery. Maria offered to accompany David to his appointment with Luna. The three of them walked the 6 blocks to Dr. Martinez's office, with Luna maintaining a protective position beside David. Every time a stranger approached or a car backfired, David would tense up, but Luna's calm demeanor helped him stay grounded. Dr. Martinez was impressed by the progress David had made with Luna's help. "Therapy animals can be incredibly effective," she explained, "but Luna seems to have an unusual intuitive understanding of your specific needs. She's not just providing comfort, she's actively helping you rebuild your confidence." During the session, Dr. Martinez introduced a new therapeutic technique called exposure therapy. The goal was to gradually expose David to situations that triggered his anxiety, starting with very mild triggers and slowly working up to more challenging ones. Luna would be an important part of this process. They started with simple exercises in the office. Dr. Martinez asked David to sit in a small closet with the door slightly open while Luna waited outside. Initially, David could only manage a few seconds before his claustrophobia kicked in, but knowing Luna was just outside the door helped him stay calm longer each time they tried. Luna seemed to understand the exercise intuitively. She would position herself where David could see her through the crack in the door, providing visual reassurance that he wasn't truly trapped. When the exercise was over, she would immediately come to him, offering comfort and congratulation for his courage. Over the following weeks, David's progress accelerated. With Luna's help, he was able to ride elevators again, though only when she was with him. He started taking short walks around his neighborhood, always with Luna by his side. Most importantly, he began sleeping through the night, without nightmares when Luna was allowed to stay over at his apartment. Maria was amazed by the bond that had formed between her dog and David. Luna seemed to have adopted him as part of her pack, showing the same protective instincts toward him that she had always shown toward Maria. It was as if she understood that David was part of her family now. The media had picked up on David's story, and reporters were interested in interviewing him about his rescue and recovery. Initially, David was reluctant to speak publicly about his experience, but Dr. Martinez suggested it might be therapeutic for him to share his story with others who had experienced similar trauma. When the local news station arrived to film the interview, David was nervous but determined. Luna sat beside him throughout the filming, providing the emotional support he needed to speak openly about his ordeal. The story that aired showed not just David's resilience but Luna's remarkable ability to help humans heal from trauma. The response to the news story was overwhelming. David received dozens of letters and emails from people who had experienced kidnapping, assault, or other traumatic events. Many shared their own stories of recovery and offered encouragement. Several people specifically asked about therapy dogs like Luna. Dr. Mitchell from the hospital contacted Maria after seeing the news story. "We've had numerous requests for therapy dog visits since your story aired," she reported. "Would you be interested in expanding Luna's work to help more patients?" David immediately supported the idea. "Luna saved my life," he said. "If she can help other people the way she's helped me, then we have an obligation to make that happen. I want to be part of it too. Maybe helping others will be part of my own healing." As David's confidence grew, so did his dreams for the future. He began researching therapy dog training programs and talking to other handlers about their experiences. Luna had shown him a new purpose in life, one that went far beyond his engineering career. 6 months after his rescue, David made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He asked his employer for a permanent leave of absence so he could dedicate his life to training therapy dogs alongside Maria and Luna. His colleagues thought he was making a mistake, walking away from a successful engineering career. But David had found something more meaningful than any project he had ever worked on. The formal therapy dog certification process was more rigorous than Maria had expected. Luna had to pass multiple evaluations testing her temperament, obedience, and ability to remain calm in stressful situations. While her natural instincts were extraordinary, she still needed to learn specific techniques for working with different types of trauma patients. David threw himself into learning everything he could about animal-assisted therapy. He enrolled in courses, attended conferences, and volunteered at local hospitals to gain experience. His own trauma had given him unique insights into what patients needed, and he was able to communicate these needs to Luna in ways that even experienced trainers couldn't. Dr. Martinez was fascinated by David's transformation. "He's channeling his own healing into helping others," she observed during one of their sessions. "It's one of the most positive responses to trauma I've ever witnessed. Luna didn't just save his life, she gave him a new reason for living." The first official therapy visit was at the Children's Hospital where Dr. Mitchell worked. Luna would be working with young patients who had experienced various forms of trauma, from car accidents to abuse cases. David was nervous about whether Luna's techniques would translate to working with children, but he needn't have worried. 8-year-old Tommy Rodriguez had been in the hospital for 3 weeks after a car accident that killed his parents. He hadn't spoken to anyone since arriving and refused to participate in any therapy sessions. The staff was running out of ideas when they suggested a visit from Luna. When Luna entered Tommy's room, she immediately sensed his deep sadness. Instead of approaching him directly, she lay down on the floor near his bed and simply waited. David and Maria sat quietly in chairs, giving Luna space to work her magic. After 20 minutes of silence, Tommy climbed down from his bed and sat on the floor next to Luna. He didn't say anything, but he began gently stroking her fur. Luna remained perfectly still, allowing the grieving child to take comfort from her presence. "She knows he needs time," David whispered to the attending nurse. "She's not pushing him to interact, she's just letting him know he's not alone." Over the course of an hour, Tommy gradually relaxed. He eventually curled up next to Luna, using her body as a pillow. For the first time since his parents' death, he fell asleep without crying. The nursing staff was amazed by the transformation. Luna's success with Tommy led to more requests from the pediatric ward. She worked with children recovering from surgery, dealing with chronic illnesses and processing traumatic experiences. Each child presented different challenges, but Luna seemed to instinctively know what each one needed. David found that his own experiences helped him understand what the young patients were going through. When 9-year-old Sarah expressed fears about being alone, David could relate to her anxiety in ways that other adults couldn't. His honesty about his own struggles helped the children feel less isolated in their fear. Mr. David was scared too, Sarah told her counselor after one of Luna's visits. But Luna helped him get brave again. "Maybe she can help me too." Word of Luna's abilities spread beyond the hospital. The local police department asked if she could work with officers who had experienced traumatic incidents. The fire department made a similar request for their paramedics who were struggling with post-traumatic stress. Maria was initially overwhelmed by all the attention and requests. She had never intended for Luna to become a full-time therapy dog, but the need was clearly enormous. David helped her see that they could make a real difference in people's lives if they organized their efforts properly. They decided to establish a non-profit organization called Luna's Legacy to train other therapy dogs and their handlers. David used his engineering background to develop systematic training protocols, while Maria contributed her deep understanding of Luna's natural abilities. The first training class included 6 dogs and their owners. Luna served as the demonstration dog, showing the other animals how to approach patients, when to provide comfort, and how to remain calm in hospital environments. David was surprised by how well Luna adapted to being a teacher. One of the most challenging aspects of therapy dog work was learning to handle the emotional weight of the job. Luna worked with patients who were dying, children who had been abused, and adults who had lost everything. David struggled with taking on so much pain and suffering, even secondhand. Dr. Martinez helped him develop coping strategies. "You can't save everyone," she reminded him, "but you can offer comfort and hope to people who desperately need it. That's a gift, not a burden." Luna seemed to understand this balance naturally. She would give everything she had to each patient, but at the end of the day, she would return to being a regular dog, playing fetch and enjoying simple pleasures. David learned to follow her example, separating his work life from his personal healing time. The police investigation into David's kidnapping finally bore fruit when the 2 perpetrators were arrested in another state. They had been involved in several other crimes and were facing multiple charges. David was asked to testify at their trial, which brought back many difficult memories. Luna accompanied David to the courthouse on the day of his testimony. She waited outside the courtroom while he spoke, but her presence in the building gave him the strength he needed to face his attackers. When he emerged from the courtroom, she was there to comfort him through the emotional aftermath. The trial was covered extensively in the local media, which brought even more attention to Luna's story. National news outlets picked up the story, and David found himself being interviewed on television programs about trauma recovery and animal-assisted therapy. The exposure led to opportunities they had never imagined. A publisher approached David about writing a book about his experience and Luna's role in his recovery. Several hospitals in other states asked if Luna could visit their patients. A major pet food company offered to sponsor their non-profit organization. David was careful not to let the attention go to his head. "This isn't about fame," he told Maria. "It's about helping people heal. If the publicity helps us reach more people who need Luna's help, then it's worth it. But we have to stay focused on our mission." Luna seemed completely unaffected by her celebrity status. She approached each new patient with the same dedication and compassion she had shown from the beginning. Whether she was working with a traumatized child or a wounded veteran, she gave her full attention to their needs. The success of their work attracted the attention of researchers studying animal-assisted therapy. Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychologist from the State University, asked if she could study Luna's methods to better understand how therapy dogs help trauma patients recover. David was enthusiastic about participating in research that could help improve therapy dog training programs. "If we can understand what makes Luna so effective," he said, "maybe we can teach those techniques to other dogs and handlers." The research project involved filming Luna's interactions with patients and analyzing her responses to different situations. What they discovered was that Luna had developed a sophisticated understanding of human emotions and trauma responses. She could read subtle cues that even trained therapists sometimes missed. More importantly, Luna had learned to adjust her approach based on each patient's specific needs. With anxious patients, she remained calm and still. With depressed patients, she was more interactive and playful. With angry or aggressive patients, she maintained a respectful distance while still offering comfort. As the first year of Luna's legacy came to an end, David reflected on how much his life had changed. The scared, traumatized man who had been rescued from that abandoned building had transformed into someone who helped others find hope in their darkest moments. Luna had not only saved his life, she had shown him how to save others. 2 years after Luna's legacy was founded, the organization had grown beyond anything David and Maria had imagined. They now had 15 certified therapy dog teams working across 5 states, and requests for their services came in daily from hospitals, schools, and rehabilitation centers. Luna, now 6 years old, had become the most experienced therapy dog anyone had ever seen. She had worked with over 300 patients and had been instrumental in training dozens of other therapy dogs. But with success came new challenges that tested everyone's limits. The most difficult case came when Luna was asked to work with veterans at the Regional Veterans Affairs Hospital. Many of these patients were dealing with severe PTSD from combat experiences, and their trauma manifested in ways that were different from civilian patients. Sergeant Michael Thompson had been home from Afghanistan for 2 years, but still struggled with nightmares, flashbacks, and violent outbursts. He had been through multiple treatment programs without success and was skeptical about the idea of a therapy dog helping him. "I don't need some pet to fix me," he told David during their first meeting. "I've seen things that would break that dog's spirit in 5 minutes." Luna seemed to understand Michael's hostility wasn't really directed at her. She maintained a respectful distance, lying quietly in the corner of the room while David talked with Michael about his experiences. She didn't try to approach or seek attention, but her presence was calming in a way that surprised the veteran. During their 3rd session, Michael had a severe flashback triggered by a helicopter flying over the hospital. He became disoriented and aggressive, reliving a firefight from his deployment. The staff was about to intervene when Luna did something remarkable. She approached Michael slowly and deliberately, positioning herself directly in his line of sight. She didn't try to touch him or get close, but she maintained steady eye contact until Michael's awareness returned to the present moment. Her calm presence helped anchor him to reality. "How did she know to do that?" Michael asked afterward, still shaking from the experience. "It was like she could see what was happening in my head." David explained that Luna had learned to recognize the signs of flashbacks and dissociation from working with other trauma patients. "She's developed her own techniques for helping people stay grounded," he said. "We don't fully understand how she does it, but the results speak for themselves." Michael's progress with Luna was slow but steady. Unlike civilian trauma patients, he needed Luna to be strong and confident rather than gentle and nurturing. Luna adapted her approach, becoming more of a steady companion than a comforting presence. She helped Michael feel less isolated without making him feel vulnerable. The work with veterans brought new attention to Luna's legacy, but it also highlighted the emotional toll the work was taking on everyone involved. Maria noticed that Luna was becoming tired more easily and seemed less enthusiastic about new cases. Dr. Foster, the researcher who had been studying Luna's methods, was concerned about burnout. "Therapy dogs typically work for 3 to 5 years before retirement," she explained. "Luna has been doing this work for over 2 years at an intensity level that's unprecedented. We need to consider reducing her caseload." David was reluctant to limit Luna's work when so many people needed her help, but he couldn't ignore the signs that she was becoming overwhelmed. They decided to focus on training other dogs to carry on Luna's work while gradually reducing her direct patient contact. The training program had evolved significantly since its early days. David had developed a comprehensive curriculum that combined Luna's intuitive methods with scientific understanding of trauma recovery. New handlers learned not just how to work with therapy dogs, but how to read patients' emotional states and respond appropriately. One of their most successful graduates was a golden retriever named Buddy, whose handler was a former nurse named Rebecca Martinez. Buddy had learned Luna's technique of remaining still during patient distress and had developed his own specialty, working with elderly patients in nursing homes. Another success story was Max, a German shepherd like Luna, who worked specifically with children who had been victims of abuse. Max's handler, Detective Lisa Chen, used him during interviews with young witnesses, helping them feel safe enough to share their experiences. As Luna's legacy expanded, so did the complexity of their operations. They needed to coordinate schedules across multiple hospitals, maintain certification standards for all their teams, and secure funding for their growing programs. David found himself spending more time on administration and less time doing the direct patient work he loved. The solution came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Adams, David's former manager at Tech Solutions, had been following his work with Luna's legacy and was impressed by the organization's growth. She offered to volunteer her business management skills to help streamline their operations. "You've built something amazing," Jennifer told David, "but you need to let other people handle the business side so you can focus on what you do best. You and Luna shouldn't be spending your time writing grant proposals and managing schedules." With Jennifer's help, Luna's legacy became more efficient and better organized. They hired professional staff to handle administrative tasks, allowing David and Maria to focus on training and direct patient care. This change reinvigorated their passion for the work and gave Luna more energy for her interactions with patients. The organization's success attracted the attention of major foundations and government agencies. The National Institute of Mental Health awarded them a significant grant to study the effectiveness of their training methods. The Department of Veterans Affairs contracted with them to expand their programs to VA hospitals nationwide. But success also brought new pressures. Media attention sometimes felt intrusive, and David worried that the focus on Luna's story was overshadowing the broader mission of helping trauma patients. He was careful to redirect interviews toward the importance of therapy dog programs in general, rather than just Luna's individual achievements. One particularly challenging situation arose when a family whose child had not been helped by Luna's visit blamed the organization for raising false hopes. The child, a 10-year-old who had witnessed a violent crime, had not responded to Luna's presence and continued to struggle with severe anxiety. David was devastated by the family's criticism, feeling personally responsible for their disappointment. Dr. Martinez helped him understand that not every patient would be helped by therapy dogs, and that didn't diminish the value of the work they were doing. "You can't save everyone," she reminded him, echoing the advice she had given him years earlier. "But you've helped hundreds of people find hope and healing. One unsuccessful case doesn't negate all the lives you've changed." Luna seemed to understand David's distress and spent extra time comforting him during this difficult period. Her steady presence reminded him why they had started this work and motivated him to continue despite the setbacks. The incident led to important changes in their program. They began setting more realistic expectations with families and patients, explaining that therapy dogs were one tool among many in the healing process. They also developed better screening procedures to identify patients who were most likely to benefit from their services. As Luna approached her 3rd year of therapy work, David began thinking about her eventual retirement. She had given so much of herself to helping others heal, and he wanted to ensure that her later years would be peaceful and comfortable. The question was how to transition away from direct patient care while still utilizing Luna's unique abilities. The answer came when a local university approached them about establishing a therapy dog training center where Luna could serve as a mentor for younger dogs while working with less demanding cases. David loved the idea of Luna becoming a teacher and mentor. It would allow her to continue contributing to the field she had helped create while reducing the emotional demands of direct trauma work. Most importantly, it would ensure that her legacy would continue through the many dogs and handlers she would train. 5 years had passed since Luna first found David imprisoned in that abandoned building. Now at 8 years old, Luna had officially transitioned from active therapy work to her new role as a mentor and trainer at the University Therapy Dog Institute that bore her name. The Luna Institute had become the premier training facility for therapy dogs in the country. David stood in the spacious training facility, watching Luna work with a young border collie named Scout. The puppy was learning the fundamentals of patient interaction, and Luna demonstrated each technique with the patience of a master teacher. Her movements were slower now, but her intelligence and compassion remained as sharp as ever. "She's remarkable," said Dr. James Wright, the Institute's director. "I've never seen an animal teach other animals with such deliberate intention. She seems to understand that she's passing on knowledge that will help future patients." The Institute had documented over 150 successful therapy dog graduations since Luna began teaching there. Each dog carried forward some aspect of her methods, creating a network of healing that stretched across the continent. Veterans hospitals, children's facilities, and trauma centers all relied on dogs trained in Luna's techniques. Maria visited the Institute every day, even though she no longer needed to bring Luna to work. At 62, she had decided to semi-retire from active therapy work. But she couldn't stay away from the place where she and Luna had found their life's purpose. She often sat in on training sessions, sharing stories about Luna's early cases with new handlers. People ask me if I ever expected Luna to have this kind of impact, Maria told a group of new students. The truth is, I just thought I had a smart, compassionate dog. I never imagined she would change so many lives, including my own. David had found his perfect role as the Institute's Director of Training and Patient Services. He oversaw the development of new therapeutic techniques, while maintaining direct contact with patients through carefully selected cases. His own trauma had become a source of strength, allowing him to connect with people in ways that textbook knowledge never could. The research conducted at the Institute had revolutionized understanding of animal-assisted therapy. Dr. Foster's studies of Luna's methods had been published in major medical journals and were now taught in psychology and veterinary schools worldwide. The Luna protocol had become the gold standard for therapy dog training. One particularly significant breakthrough came when researchers discovered that Luna had been using specific breathing patterns and body positioning to help regulate patients' stress responses. This discovery led to new training techniques that could be taught to other dogs, multiplying Luna's impact exponentially. The most moving moment of the year came when Sergeant Michael Thompson, the veteran who had initially resisted Luna's help, brought his own dog to the Institute for therapy training. Max, a rescue dog with his own traumatic past, had shown natural healing abilities that reminded Michael of Luna. "Luna saved my life," Michael told David during the orientation session. "Now I want to help Max save other people's lives. It's like paying it forward, but with 4 legs and a tail." Michael's recovery had been remarkable. He had completed college, married his longtime girlfriend, and found work as a counselor for other veterans. His partnership with Max represented the kind of full-circle healing that made all the challenges worthwhile. Luna worked personally with Max during his training, and the connection between the two dogs was immediate. Max seemed to absorb Luna's calm confidence and patient approach to working with traumatized individuals. Within 6 months, he had become one of the Institute's most promising graduates. The success stories continued to multiply. Amy Rodriguez, whose 8-year-old son Tommy had been Luna's first pediatric patient, brought her daughter Emma to meet Luna on the anniversary of Tommy's recovery. Tommy, now 13, had become an advocate for therapy dogs and often spoke at fundraising events. "Luna taught me that healing doesn't always look the way we expect," Amy said, watching Emma gently stroke Luna's graying fur. Tommy didn't get better because Luna performed some miracle. He got better because she showed him he wasn't alone in his pain. David's book, When Angels Have 4 Legs, A Journey of Trauma, Healing, and Hope, had become a bestseller and had been translated into 15 languages. The proceeds funded scholarships for therapy dog training, ensuring that financial barriers wouldn't prevent qualified handlers from joining the program. The book's success had led to speaking engagements around the world, but David was selective about his travel. He never wanted to be away from Luna for more than a few days, knowing that their time together was precious and finite. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, David sat in Luna's favorite spot in the Institute's garden, watching her demonstrate greeting techniques to a group of golden retriever puppies. The late afternoon sun highlighted the gray patches around her muzzle, reminders of all the years she had devoted to healing others. Dr. Martinez, who still served as a consultant to the Institute, joined David on the bench. "Have you thought about what happens when Luna can no longer teach?" she asked gently. David had been dreading this conversation, but he knew it was inevitable. "She's slowing down," he admitted. "Some days she seems tired after just an hour of training, but she still loves the work and the young dogs learn so much from her." "She's had an extraordinary career," Dr. Martinez observed. "Most therapy dogs work for 3 to 5 years. Luna has been at this for 6 years, and she's trained more dogs than anyone thought possible. When the time comes to let her fully retire, it won't be a failure. It will be a celebration of everything she's accomplished." As if sensing the conversation was about her, Luna left the puppies and walked over to David. She placed her head on his knee and looked up at him with eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom she had gained from years of helping others heal. "Not yet, girl," David whispered, scratching behind her ears. "But when you're ready to rest, you'll have earned it. You've taught us all how to help people find hope again." The institute had plans for Luna's eventual full retirement. A special comfortable area was being designed where she could rest and enjoy visits from former patients and their families. She would always be welcome to observe training sessions and interact with new dogs, but only when she felt like it. Maria had already begun planning a celebration to honor Luna's contributions to the field of therapy dog work. Representatives from hospitals, schools, and rehabilitation centers around the world had expressed interest in attending. It would be a recognition not just of Luna's individual achievements, but of the entire network of healing she had created. As the sun set over the institute, David reflected on the journey that had brought them all here. A chance walk in the woods, a dog's persistent curiosity, and a determination to help others had created something far greater than any of them had imagined. Luna had shown the world that healing often comes from the most unexpected sources. She had taught hundreds of people that recovery was possible, that trauma didn't have to define their lives, and that sometimes the best medicine was simply knowing that someone cared enough to stay by your side. The abandoned building where David had been imprisoned had been converted into a community center offering free counseling services. A plaque by the entrance read, "In memory of all who have suffered alone, and in honor of those who refuse to let others suffer alone." Below it was a bronze statue of a German shepherd, eternally standing guard, waiting to help whoever might need her. David knew that Luna's story was far from over. Every dog she trained, every life she touched, and every person who found hope through animal-assisted therapy was part of her continuing legacy. She had shown them all that freedom from trauma was possible, and that healing could come through the simple act of refusing to abandon those who need help. As they walked back to the building together, Luna's tail wagged contentedly. She had found David when he was trapped and frightened, and in saving him, she had discovered her own life's purpose. Now, as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, she could rest knowing that her work would continue long after she was gone, carried forward by all the lives she had touched and all the hearts she had helped heal.